March the 1st, 2019. A major boxing fight night has descended on Melbourne. The Pavilion in Kensington hosting a showpiece event. 700 plus patrons packed into the venue for a fight spectacle bristling with Australia's best amateur fighting talents. But on a night where bruising hits, body blows and total knockouts were given inside the ring, it was the deadly actions outside the ropes that marred the big fight spectacle. A 33-year-old man lay gunned down, assassinated outside the arena's main entrance. 2 others triaged to hospital with bullet wounds. Benjamin Togiai, a New Zealand-born young father working in construction and attending his first ever fight night after receiving free tickets from his boss, killed after tensions amongst warring drug gangs boiled over. The gunman, Abdullah El-Nasher, prominent in a significant Middle Eastern family crime syndicate, the man responsible for firing the fatal shot. This is the story of an underworld triple shooting that shook Australia and left the victim's family seeking justice for an amazing, warm, bubbly and super happy person. You're watching Pacific Crime TV. Please remember to subscribe, like and enable notifications so you never miss a new release, providing you insight on the shocking murders, underworld hits and organised crime groups shaking our cities. Chapter 1. The El-Nasher Network. No less than 8 siblings comprised the El-Nasher family, but it was the brothers Abdullah and Ali who had set out on a criminal path in their teenage years. The brothers had a brutal background of inflicting serious violence and criminal histories involving drug supply and firearm offences from a young age. In 2012, the brothers had orchestrated a sickening assault on a young man in Brunswick. On that occasion, the victim was driving down Harrison Street when he encountered a road ahead blocked off by a large convoy of vehicles. The driver reasonably sought support to get through the blockade, but help was not forthcoming. Rather, an El-Nasher accomplice would kick the innocent victim's vehicle before another jumped on the roof and a third smashed through the driver's windscreen, punching him in the face. Abdullah El-Nasher then tried to rip the keys from the driver's ignition as the startled victim hurriedly escaped amidst escalating danger. What followed next was the stuff of nightmares as the defenceless, bloodied driver drove towards Sydney Road. The brothers Abdullah and Ali led the chase, speeding in excess of 100 kilometres an hour through zones designed to handle cars travelling at half that speed. The young driver was eventually again snared approaching Lygon Street, this time dragged from the car. The brothers proceeded to repeatedly kick, stamp and punch the innocent victim black and blue. The victim left with multiple trauma injuries from the senseless, unprovoked assault. All told, the pair were sentenced to just 14 months for that frenzied attack. But as the years went by, brushes with the law for the brothers only became more frequent. By 2016, then aged 23, Abdullah was back in jail, sentenced to 16 months after a police pursuit, evading arrest, and on drug possession charges in Goulburn, New South Wales. However, dishing out vicious assaults was not the brothers' only currency. Orchestrators in Melbourne's underworld drug supply and concerned in gun running, the family's Hope Street home had been targeted by Victorian Police's elite Special Operations Group previously in heavily armed tactical raids. The two again drew police attention in 2018, then questioned in connection with a targeted shooting that remains unsolved. But it was back home in Melbourne's northern suburbs the gang were facing a far bigger problem. An escalating turf war amidst rival groups seeking to control local drug operations had the brothers marked men. In the weeks leading up to the fateful events of Fight Night, the El-Nasher's criminal enterprises would go on to be rocked by a series of attacks on their panel-beating business, Epping Smash Repairs. In one incident, 2 gunmen stormed the workshops in a failed hit job before fleeing, the target not inside. Days later, the danger was spelt out, this time their garages set alight, a premeditated arson attack. vehicles lit up in flames. On February 5th, the stakes rose further still. A failed drive-by shooting, bullets spraying the Nasher family home. An escalating conflict between warring turf gangs playing out in Melbourne's suburbia. Abdullah and Ali's operations were under threat. Chapter 2: The Pavilion. Fight fans and members of the Melbourne underworld descended en masse to the Pavilion on March 1st, 2019, for the boxing showcase. Inside the sold-out venue were members of the infamous Hadara family, underworld doyen Mick Gatto, and former bikie boss Toby Mitchell. The World Boxing Association Oceania tournament, titled as providing a epic fight night of adrenaline-pumping actions, was about to live up to its pre-match hype for all the wrong reasons. The event kicked off at 6:30 p.m. with Abdullah El Nasher attending the event shortly after 8 p.m. He was accompanied by then-girlfriend Brittany Maguire, the stepdaughter of feared Australian drug kingpin Tony Mockbell. Also present on table 28 were Brittany's friend Shanae Perishech, Matthew Miko, and brothers Khalid and Ali, alongside a couple unknown to the group. But as the action got underway inside the ropes, trash talk and taunting was splitting the pavilion floor. Seated at adjacent table 64 were Benjamin Togiahi and kickboxer Omar Bicinanti, who was involved in a bitter feud with the El Nasher brothers. The two tables' heated exchanges intensified. Abdullah turned his personal mobile off and through an associate or via a burner phone summoned his gang's henchman, Osama Alushe. A text sent, "Melbourne Pavilion, bring my little friend with you and come." Around the same time, Abdullah then exited the pavilion and headed back to his Mercedes. He would re-enter ringside clutching a small black satchel. In later court testimony, Madeline Bush, who was also seated on table 28, would confirm Abdullah chillingly warned her 2 or 3 times, "You are never safe." Alushe and Matt Miko's brother of Mikhail, also seated on table 28, arrived within the hour. Both men were carrying loaded firearms. With the tension palpable, even amidst an already supercharged crowd, veteran of the Melbourne underworld Mick Gatto stepped in to try to cool down the agitated groups. His remonstrations for calm fell on deaf ears. Instead, around 9:30 p.m, Abdullah and Alushe went over to table 64 and confronted Bicinanti directly, exchanging words with his associates. Gestured back to his table by brother Khalid, El Nasher then opted to leave the pavilion at 9:46 p.m. as captured on CCTV. But 6 minutes later, Abdullah was briefly back on CCTV in the pavilion foyer, this time sporting Alushe's baseball cap and surrounded by several associates. The men loitered by the front entrance. What happened next was minutes of bloody mayhem, a north side shoot-'em-up that stunned Melbourne to its core. Chapter 3: Shots Fired. Just as the fight card's main event got set to kick off around 10 p.m, pavilion bouncers had decided enough was enough. Tables 64 and 28 were kicked out. The two groups congregated at the entrance to the pavilion. Barbs and insults continued to be traded like punches inside the ring. Abdullah and Alushe, however, were out of sight. The pair had crossed over the road some 30 yards down the street from the pavilion entrance, setting their targets. After a brief exchange between the pair, Abdullah raced across Stubb Street towards the men from table 64 and sandwiched himself between 2 parked cars near the venue entrance. From there he fired 2 shots before resetting and unloading another 3 rounds. Abdullah then fled onto the street's footpath before again sheltering between parked vehicles. As El Nasher crouched between the cars, Osama Alushe emerged from behind a van and fired a single shot towards the footpath. Abdullah had fired 5.25 automatic Colt rounds in all, from a handgun at the group. Benjamin Togiai was tragically shot in the chest. He stumbled south along the footpath before collapsing, bleeding out and dying. Omar Bicinanti was also shot once in the upper left thigh. The carnage was not only confined to Stubbs Street, however. Inside the pavilion's entrance, Mikhail Miko had unleashed 2 rounds on Joseph Abushaya, an associate of Bicinanti, who was also armed. He was left bleeding on the ground after taking shots to the cheek, stomach and leg. Abushaya was also allegedly pistol-whipped by Miko and kicked in the head by the brother Ali al-Nasher as the bloody chaos unfolded. He would spend a week in intensive care, requiring emergency surgery to remove bullet fragments from his abdomen. Abdullah, Ali and Khalid al-Nasher immediately fled the scene along with Mikhail Miko in the shooter's Mercedes. As Victorian police locked down the scene, trams were stopped, roads blocked, witnesses contained, and the wounded tended to by paramedics. Terrified revellers hiding under tables ringside. By 11:30 p.m, the gunman and accomplices were back at Abdullah's Port Melbourne apartment and preparing a plan to go on the run. The gloves were off in the Melbourne underworld. 16 seconds of carnage had culminated in the death of a young father. Victorian police knew they were in a race against time to apprehend the gunman. Chapter 4: Wanted Men. The al-Nasher network extended interstate, and Abdullah and Mikhail Miko opted to flee. The duo fled to a safe house in Bankstown, Sydney, where the fugitives holed up. But an arrest breakthrough came after Victoria Police's Homicide and Anti-Gang Task Force, ECHO Squad, requested assistance from the New South Wales Police's State Crime Command. The police were acting on an anonymous tip-off. The gunman fled interstate to Sydney. At 9:45 p.m. on March 9, 2019, a heavily armed New South Wales Tactical Operations Unit swooped on the property. As Abdullah sought to evade arrest, he jumped from a lower floor balcony, sustaining leg injuries. After being treated at Sydney's Liverpool Hospital, Abdullah was then brought before Bankstown Local Court on Tuesday, March 12th, and extradition was granted. On March 14th, Abdullah appeared before Melbourne Magistrates Court, charged with murder, and was remanded in custody. Miko was also remanded in custody, charged with 7 offences, including the attempted murder of Joseph Abushaya. Meanwhile, brother Ali al-Nasher remained at large for 4.5 months after Abdullah and Mikhail's capture, before finally handing himself in to police late July 2019. He would be charged with 9 offences in total, including attempted murder and intent to cause serious injury. Ali al-Nasher was released on bail in July 2020 after a successful appeal. He would never face charges for the fight night fatality. Justices Philip Priest, Mark Weinberg and Terry Forrest jointly agreed the prosecution case was insufficient. Ali al-Nasher was however returned to jail in November of 2020 after breaching bail curfew. He was viciously bashed in an armed fight at St Kilda Marina. He would go on to be further sentenced in spring 2022 to 3 years and 9 months imprisonment for a separate attack, after being found guilty of attempting to run over and repeatedly stab Ali al-Hamza in an ambush attack at a mechanics shop in Campbellfield. Al-Hamza was a street ally of Omar Bicinanti, injured in the Pavilion attack. Chapter 5: Trials and Sentencing. Mikhail Miko remained in detention until Thursday, June 29, 2023. He had faced murder charges for 4 years but pleaded guilty to a downgraded charge of recklessly causing serious injury in 2023. As the courts agreed he had diminished culpability and did not fire the fatal shot, he would be sentenced to 806 days in jail, equaling the time served in jail pre-sentencing. Miko walked away a free man. Osama Alushe and Abdullah El Nasher's Supreme Court trial commenced on May 3, 2023. The pair had spent almost 4 years in custody as the Victorian state's justice system battled a major backlog of cases in Australia post-pandemic. Abdullah stood trial on 1 murder count and 4 additional firearms charges, including threatening local businessman Marinko Verlich with a pistol in the days after the arson attacks on the family workshop in Epping. After a month-long trial by jury, Justice Christopher Beale sentenced Abdullah to a total of 29 years and 3 months imprisonment on June 5, 2023, with no parole consideration before a minimum 22 years served. On attempted murder charges for the shooting of Omar Bejanati, El Nasher was acquitted. Passing sentencing remarks, Justice Beale observed that many innocent people were left traumatised after witnessing the violence and commented he was unconvinced El Nasher was sorry for anyone other than himself, noting, "I hope I am wrong and you are truly remorseful." Additional security officers had earlier filled the courtroom, separating El Nasher supporters and the heartbroken Togiahi family. As Abdullah El Nasher was led away by corrections officers, he left the courtroom upbeat as supporters taunted court officials and offered words of encouragement to the guilty offender. Osama Alushe was separately found not guilty on all charges related to murder and attempted murder in relation to the Fight Nights events. Speaking outside the Supreme Court, the victim's father stated his relief at El Nasher's guilty verdict to reporters. "We're so happy, overwhelmed with the result today." Togiahi's sister, Jolene, also spoke to reporters on the void Benjamin's death had left in the family's lives. His daughter will grow up knowing her dad was a good man, a strong father, and a true family man. She misses him incredibly much, so at least there's some justice for her as well. The tragic events of that night in Kensington left a grieving family with an irreparable void in their hearts and a beautiful young daughter robbed of growing up with a doting daddy. Thanks for watching the channel. Please remember to like, share and comment if you enjoyed the video, and please subscribe so you never miss a new release on Pacific Crime TV.